Andrew's relationship with Epstein has cast a scandalous shadow over the royal family for over a decade. The humiliating punishment may not be the end of Andrew's problem.
It was in August 2019 that the scandal involving Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein first began to surface widely online, and ever since then, Andrew has been pushed further away from the royal family. But beyond that, the investigation has continued to reveal details no one expected. Now, a royal biographer has reportedly uncovered and leaked another piece of evidence about Prince Andrew, and this could be the end for him. What exactly is this new evidence that has brought the story back into the spotlight again? Stay tuned as we break down what the royal biographer has just revealed about Andrew's ongoing scandal. The evidence royal biographer leaked about Prince Andrew. One of the most explosive claims came from royal biographer Andrew Loney, who argued that diplomats and royal staff had privately complained for years about Andrew's behavior during overseas visits. Loney claimed some officials were deeply uncomfortable with requests allegedly linked to young blonde women during foreign trips. Although Prince Andrew was never found guilty in connection with these allegations,
he was Prince Andrew. Today, he woke up a commoner, plain Mr. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
They continued to fuel public criticism and damage his reputation. After those stories came out, many people started asking, if these rumors had been around for so long, why had nobody inside the royal family acted sooner? Let's uncover the full timeline and how it eventually slipped into the spotlight. In the early days, before the scandal came to light, former diplomats reportedly suggested they were pressured into arranging entertainment and luxury services for Andrew during official state visits. According to claims raised in books and interviews, some officials allegedly felt less like representatives of the British government and more like personal assistants handling private demands. Those stories became tied to Andrew's controversial years as Britain's trade envoy, a role that allowed him to travel widely while building relationships with wealthy businessmen and foreign royals. It was also reported that even before the Epstein scandal exploded, there had already been criticism inside Westminster about whether Andrew was damaging Britain's image abroad instead of helping it. Then came the stories involving airline staff and airport workers. Loney repeated claims from former personnel who allegedly witnessed inappropriate behavior toward female crew members during flights. One former Heathrow-linked source reportedly claimed Andrew acted in ways that would have caused major consequences for an ordinary passenger. Again, these stories remain allegations, but they helped build a wider public image that some people say had been ignored for years because Andrew was a royal. That is where the controversy became bigger than Andrew himself. Many commentators believe the real issue is not only about one prince, but about whether being part of the monarchy allowed behavior that ordinary people would never have been allowed to get away with. Questions about privilege followed closely behind those allegations. Reports from former staff and royal insiders often described Andrew as demanding and difficult during official trips. On the surface, these stories may seem less serious compared to the Epstein scandal, but they helped shape the public view of Andrew as someone privileged and out of touch with ordinary people. At a time when the royal family was already under pressure to appear more modern and relatable, reports about luxury demands only increased the criticism against him. But that's not all. The accusations involving palace staff were equally damaging. Former workers allegedly described an atmosphere where employees felt nervous whenever Andrew was nearby. Some reports claimed staff were often uncomfortable around him because of his temper and attitude. Similar claims about difficult behavior have been made about members of the royal family before, but Andrew's situation drew more attention because of the wider controversy surrounding him. Another allegation that attracted attention involved claims about Andrew's treatment of animals. Loney described an alleged incident during a shooting weekend where Andrew reportedly kicked a dog after it grabbed food. According to the story, members of the royal family were present during the incident. The claim has not been independently confirmed by the royal family, but it became symbolic for critics who already believed Andrew behaved without restraint. Foreign trips became another major focus of scrutiny. Some reports and interviews alleged Andrew used official overseas visits to arrange private encounters with women. Claims surfaced that embassy staff were sometimes expected to organize hotel arrangements that went beyond normal diplomatic duties. The allegations involving inappropriate comments toward young women also added to the controversy. According to accounts discussed by Lowney, some women allegedly described uncomfortable encounters with Andrew at parties and social gatherings. Stories included flirtatious remarks, suggestive jokes, and physical behavior that critics considered inappropriate. Once again, these remain allegations rather than established legal findings, but together they painted a picture that many people found deeply troubling, especially after the Virginia Giuffre lawsuit pushed Andrew's past friendships and social circle under a microscope. Then there were the more sensational claims involving pornography. Lowney referenced allegations from former staff and protection officers suggesting Andrew consumed large amounts of pornographic material during certain trips and periods of naval service. Those stories were among the most controversial parts of the interview because they relied heavily on second-hand accounts and insider claims rather than documented evidence. Even so, their publication showed how far the public conversation around Andrew had shifted. Many critics believe the larger issue is not whether every allegation can be proven beyond doubt, but whether royal protection allowed questionable behavior to remain hidden for decades. Lowney believed that palace officials and royal aides often ignored complaints or avoided confronting Andrew directly. That idea has become a major part of the modern debate around the monarchy. People are no longer only asking whether Andrew behaved badly. They are also asking whether the institution failed to hold people accountable, because protecting the image of the crown mattered more than facing difficult truths. Those concerns grew stronger after some commentators suggested senior royals may have known more about Andrew's reputation than they publicly admitted. It was reported that Queen Elizabeth repeatedly defended Andrew even as scandals mounted around him. Aside from Andrew's manner, financial questions added another layer to the controversy. Reports over the years repeatedly examined Andrew's wealthy connections, luxury lifestyle, and relationships with businessmen from countries including Kazakhstan, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Journalists questioned how he maintained such an expensive lifestyle after his role as trade envoy ended. Attention also turned toward gifts, property arrangements, and financial support from wealthy associates. Some investigations looked into controversial business contacts connected to him, although not all of those inquiries led to formal findings. Several of these claims also remain unproven allegations repeated by authors, former staff, or unnamed sources. Yet the sheer number of stories, combined with Andrew's disastrous 2019 BBC Newsnight interview, permanently changed public opinion about him. Before the Epstein controversy, many Britons still saw Andrew mainly as a Falklands War veteran and senior royal. After it, he became one of the most controversial figures the monarchy has faced in decades. That change may be the biggest story of all. For years, the royal family managed to survive scandals through careful public handling. Andrew's situation proved much harder to control. As the controversy became more public, the monarchy was forced to make difficult decisions. Today, Prince Andrew appears to have lost much of what once defined his royal position. The question now is how much he lost and how deeply the controversy changed his life. What the allegations have cost. Andrew. If you look at the life of Prince Andrew over the last few years, it almost feels like a slow public stripping away of status, step by step. Not one single dramatic fall, but a long chain of consequences that kept building on top of each other. A lot of people trace the real turning point back to that 2019 BBC Newsnight interview linked to the Epstein questions, and after that moment, things never really recovered in the same way again. The first visible hit came when Andrew stepped back from royal duties. Officially, it was framed as a voluntary decision, but in reality, the pressure around the interview involving Jeffrey Epstein made it almost impossible for him to continue normal public work. The problem was not just what he said, but how he said it, and how the public reacted. In modern media terms, it was a breakdown moment, and after that, every appearance became a risk rather than a duty. Not long after that, the structure around his royal role started collapsing further. By 2022, his honorary military titles and royal patronages were removed, especially as the civil case brought by Virginia Giuffre moved forward in the United States. This mattered more than people think, because those titles were not just symbolic. They were part of his identity as a senior royal, and once they were taken away, his public standing inside the institution became much thinner. At the same time, Buckingham Palace confirmed Andrew could no longer use the title His Royal Highness in any official capacity. That might sound like a small change, but in royal terms, it is a serious downgrade. The public reaction about Andrew also changed sharply during this period. Andrew was once seen in a relatively traditional royal role, especially because of his military service during the Falklands War. But after the Epstein controversy grew, he became one of the most controversial figures connected to the modern monarchy. Public trust dropped heavily, and in Britain, he went from being a working royal to someone many people now associate almost entirely with scandal. One of the biggest financial and legal moments came with the settlement of the civil lawsuit with Virginia Giuffre in 2022. Prince Andrew denied wrongdoing, but still agreed to a reported multi-million-pound settlement. Even without a trial, that outcome was widely interpreted as a major turning point. In public opinion, settlements like that do not always end questions. In many cases, they create even more questions because uncertainty remains. The damage to his public image was already deep, but the Newsnight interview kept making things worse over time. His explanations, especially his claim that he could not sweat during the nightclub visit, became major talking points around the world. Many people saw it as an example of how badly a public figure can handle a public crisis. In many ways, the interview did not reduce attention on the Epstein controversy. Instead, it became one of the biggest reasons the controversy continued to grow. But that was not the only setback Andrew faced. Behind the scenes,
Andrew has always denied any wrongdoing and has not faced any criminal charges.
There were also reports of pressure from King Charles to limit anything that could bring further reputational damage to the monarchy. Whether that pressure was formal or informal is debated, but the direction of travel is clear. The modern monarchy has been trying to simplify its public image, and Andrew does not fit into that strategy. Charities and patronages also began distancing themselves. This part is often overlooked, but it is important. Royal patronage is not just ceremonial, it is a reputation link. Once organizations started cutting ties, it showed that Andrew's name had become a liability rather than an asset. Institutions tend to move early when they fear public backlash. One difficult moment came during the funeral of Queen Elizabeth in 2022. Andrew was allowed to participate in parts of the ceremonies because he was the Queen's son, but public attention quickly shifted toward what he was wearing. King Charles III decided that only working royals would normally wear military uniforms during ceremonial events.
2 days ago, a heckler confronted King Charles in an incident which reportedly left him furious and deeply rattled.
Andrew, who had lost his honorary military titles months earlier, largely appeared in civilian clothing. For someone whose military service during the Falklands War had long been part of his public image, it became another visible reminder of how much had changed. Another blow came from veterans and military figures themselves. After Andrew kept his military affiliations for years despite controversy surrounding him, pressure grew publicly. More than 150 military veterans reportedly signed an open letter asking Queen Elizabeth to remove Andrew's honorary military roles. To these veterans and military men, Andrew's connection to military organizations damaged institutions built on service and trust. When Buckingham Palace eventually confirmed those titles were gone in early 2022, many people viewed it as proof that outside pressure had become impossible to ignore. Then there was the issue of business and personal relationships. Wealthy contacts, charities, and organizations became far more careful about public association. One example involved major scrutiny around his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein long after Epstein's 2008 conviction. Andrew's 2010 meeting with Epstein in New York repeatedly resurfaced in news coverage. The photograph showing Andrew alongside Virginia Giuffre and Ghislaine Maxwell became one of the defining images attached to the scandal. But not everyone has accepted the allegations against Prince Andrew in the same way. Some supporters pointed out that Andrew was never convicted of a criminal offense connected to the allegations, and they argued that public judgment moved ahead of legal findings. Others believe that his long association with Jeffrey Epstein became one of the biggest reasons his image suffered so heavily. Questions continued to follow Andrew for years, not only about the allegations themselves, but about the nature of his relationship with Epstein and why he maintained contact after Epstein's earlier legal troubles became public. Those unanswered questions kept public debate alive. Even years later, many people still ask the same thing: what exactly was Prince Andrew's connection to Jeffrey Epstein?
But her memoir detailing her relationship with Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein went on sale this month.
And how did that friendship become one of the biggest controversies in modern royal history? To understand that, let's look more closely at how their relationship began and how it developed over time. The truth about Prince Andrew and Epstein's friendship. Looking only at the timeline, the friendship between Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein becomes less about one single moment and more about a long chain of social access, elite networking, and decisions that later faced intense public scrutiny. What made the situation uncomfortable for many people was not only what could be proven, but what the relationship with Epstein represents. The connection reportedly begins in the late 1990s, and one of the key figures often mentioned in that introduction is Ghislaine Maxwell. She moved in high-profile social circles where royals, business leaders, and wealthy financiers often mixed together in the same spaces. Epstein was not initially seen publicly as the figure he later became. When Epstein entered Andrew's social circles, the relationship reportedly expanded beyond simple introductions. Epstein is widely believed to have offered access to influential contacts, wealthy businessmen, and international elites. For someone like Andrew, who was working as a trade envoy at the time, that kind of network may have looked useful on the surface. This is where the controversy begins, because many believe that the friendship was not just social, but also strategic in terms of access and influence. Over time, Andrew was photographed and reported visiting Epstein's properties multiple times, including residences in New York. One of the most widely discussed images shows Andrew walking in Central Park with Epstein.
Is a photograph of Jeffrey Epstein and Prince Andrew, or as he was known then, Prince Andrew, walking through Central Park, an innocuous photograph.
After Epstein had already been convicted as a sex offender in 2008. That detail is important because it is one of the clearest public facts that fuels ongoing debate. The situation became even more serious when Virginia Giuffre made allegations that she was trafficked by Epstein and Maxwell and had encounters with Andrew when she was 17. Andrew has repeatedly denied all allegations, and there has been no criminal conviction against him in relation to those claims. Still, the existence of the lawsuit in the United States brought the entire story back into the spotlight in a way that earlier media coverage never managed. Andrew was not the only major figure inside Epstein's network. During the late 90s and early 2000s, Epstein built relationships with wealthy businessmen, academics, politicians, and public figures. His social connections reportedly included people like former United States President Bill Clinton, billionaire businessman Leslie Wexner, and lawyer Alan Dershowitz. Epstein cultivated an image of influence and exclusivity. He hosted gatherings, traveled with wealthy associates, and built a reputation as someone who could connect important people with other important people. Inside those circles, his friendship with Andrew became one part of a much larger social web. Evidence that Andrew and Epstein were more than casual acquaintances appeared repeatedly over time. Reports placed Andrew at Epstein's properties on multiple occasions. Reports connected Epstein not only to Andrew's private social life, but also to royal spaces. Epstein was reportedly invited to royal residences connected to Andrew, including visits linked to Windsor and Balmoral circles during the early 2000s. Former Royal Protection Officer Paul Page later publicly claimed Epstein had access to royal properties and described seeing him at royal locations connected to Andrew. Prince Andrew's public image, before the Epstein story became global news, was mostly shaped by royal service and a long period of official work for the British monarchy. As the third child of Queen Elizabeth, Andrew grew up inside a strict royal system where public service was expected from an early age. One of the most respected parts of his life came in 1982 during the Falklands War, when he served in the Royal Navy as a helicopter pilot. He took part in real military missions, including rescue and patrol work, which placed him in active danger. At the time, he was seen in Britain as a working royal who had done real service beyond palace life. In the years after the war, especially through the 1990s and early 2000s, Andrew continued his official royal duties. He attended state events, represented the royal family abroad, and later became the UK's Special Representative for International Trade and Investment from 2001 to 2011. In that role, he traveled widely, meeting business leaders, attending investment meetings, and promoting British trade in regions like the Middle East, Asia, and North America. Many people who met him during this time described him as confident, social, and active in his duties, even if sometimes informal in how he handled public situations. But things changed in ways no one had expected. It was in the late 90s that Jeffrey Epstein first began to move within the same social circles. Epstein was seen by some at the time as a wealthy man who hosted private gatherings where businessmen, academics, and public figures met. At that stage, his name had not yet been fully linked to the later scandals that defined him. Reports that came out later say that after Epstein became part of Andrew's social circle,
after the BBC reported that a second woman alleged she was sent to the UK by Jeffrey Epstein for a sexual encounter with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
People around the prince started noticing small changes in how he behaved. It was not seen as a sudden change, but more like a slow shift over time. Some who worked with Andrew during his trade envoy years in the early 2000s later said he seemed to spend more time in private social settings, especially in places linked to Epstein, including homes in New York and other locations in the United States. At the same time, Andrew's public image began to face more attention and questions. His link to Epstein started to affect him, especially after Epstein was convicted in Florida. Even with this, there is no agreement on what caused the change in how Andrew was seen. Some link it to Epstein, others to the wider elite social world. What is clear is that his early life was defined by royal duty, while his later years became tied to controversy. Surprisingly, public attention is now moving away from past controversies, and more people are asking what role Andrew might still have in the royal family in the future. The future of Prince Andrew. When people talk about the future of Prince Andrew, it is no longer about what role he might return to, but whether there is any realistic role left at all. The tone around him has shifted so far that even the idea of a public comeback feels almost disconnected from how the monarchy operates today. Most royal commentators quietly agree on one point, even if they say it in careful language. A return to frontline royal life looks extremely unlikely, and that judgment is not based on emotion, but on long-term public reaction since the Epstein scandal involving Jeffrey Epstein became global news. The core issue is not just legal or political, it is reputational. In today's media world, reputation works like a structure. Once it breaks, it is very hard to fix. That is why, even after many years, public anger in Britain has not really reduced. Polls and public talk still show that many people link Andrew more to the Epstein case than to his earlier military service or diplomatic work. This level of damage is unusual for a senior royal, and it makes any return to normal public life very difficult. Inside the royal family, things have also changed. King Charles has often supported a smaller monarchy, with fewer working royals and less public controversy. In that kind of system, Andrew does not fit easily. Even without direct statements about him, the direction is clear. A smaller monarchy naturally focuses on fewer people, and those linked to controversy are less likely to return to public duties. Because of this, the more realistic outcome is that Andrew may stay a royal in name and family ties, but not in public work. He could remain within royal properties and attend private family events, but he would not take on official duties or represent the monarchy. This kind of quiet separation is not unusual in royal history, where some members are kept within the family, but kept away from public roles. The problem is that silence does not always mean the issue is settled. New details could still appear through leaked documents, media reports, or renewed attention to Epstein-related material. Even if nothing new legally comes up, old stories can easily return in today's media and become a big topic again. Because of this, Andrew remains in a situation where his public attention can rise again if pressure increases. To understand what might happen next, it helps to look at history. One of the most direct comparisons often made is with King Edward. His abdication crisis in 1936 forced him completely out of the British throne system, and he spent much of his later life abroad, largely separated from official royal duties. The difference is that Edward's exit was clear and final, while Andrew's situation is more ambiguous. He has not left the institution, but he has been removed from its active center. There is also the example of Sarah Ferguson, Andrew's former wife, who experienced her own public scandals and financial controversies. While she has maintained personal relationships within parts of the royal family, she never fully regained official standing. Her situation shows how the monarchy can separate personal connection from institutional role. You can still be part of the family network, but excluded from the public-facing structure. Andrew now appears to be in a similar category, although at a more intense level of scrutiny. Then there is the broader comparison with Princess Diana, whose separation and later divorce from Charles revealed how quickly the institution can step back from individuals who become sources of public pressure. Diana remained globally influential, but she was no longer inside the royal system in any formal sense. But beyond Diana's case, there is a more recent example, although not exactly similar to Prince Andrew's situation. A more recent example is Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Their decision to step away from royal duties created a different kind of separation, one that was voluntary, but still resulted in loss of official roles and funding. While their situation is very different from Andrew's, it shows a consistent pattern. When a royal figure becomes too controversial or too independent from the institution's messaging, the monarchy reduces their official footprint. The goal is not punishment, but control of public exposure. The biggest long-term issue for Andrew is public trust, and that is not something that can be fixed through formal titles or legal settlements. Even if no criminal conviction ever occurs in relation to allegations involving Virginia Giuffre, the association alone has already created a permanent reputational shadow. In public life, perception often becomes more powerful than legal outcome. Once a figure is strongly linked in the public mind to a global scandal, recovery is extremely difficult. From the monarchy's point of view, survival is the main goal. History shows that the royal family usually does not fall because of scandal. Instead, it protects itself by stepping away from people linked to controversy. That is why many believe Andrew's public role will stay limited, not only because of personal issues, but to protect the image of the institution. In this way, Andrew is also an example of how the modern monarchy manages reputation and risk. There is also ongoing speculation about whether Andrew could eventually spend more time outside the United Kingdom. Some commentators suggest that reducing his physical presence in Britain would also reduce media pressure and public hostility. This kind of quiet relocation has been used in various forms in royal history, where controversial figures are not formally exiled, but gradually shift their base of life away from public attention. Whether that happens in Andrew's case is uncertain, but the idea itself shows how far his situation has moved away from normal royal expectations. When you look at his legacy, the difference is clear. Andrew was once known as a naval officer who served in the Falklands War, and later as a royal who worked in international trade and diplomacy. That was his public image for many years. Today, however, most people mainly connect his name to scandal, legal issues, and his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. This change is not only about the media, but also about public memory. Do you think the monarchy should accept Andrew back despite all the allegations? Share your opinions with us in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the following video on your screen, and you will enjoy it.